As I see many of you connecting, I want to welcome you. My name is Marianne Maldonado, and on behalf of the Board of Directors and the entire team of the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, I'd like to welcome you to our program on Portugal's presidency of the Council of the European Union, with Portugal's ambassador to the US, His Excellency Domingos Fezas Vital, who will be joined by the Council's own Sandia Bayou for a discussion on the unprecedented challenges presented by Brexit and the global pandemic. Tonight, it's our honor to host students from all across Houston, as well as our members, and I've seen several guests join us today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Council, we are Houston's premier organization, bringing together over 10,000 people every year for one-on-one conversations just like this that help us better understand the world around us. Programs like our recent conversation with Mr. Bill Gates and our upcoming programs with David Rubenstein, Walter Isaacson, Admiral James Stavridis, and Elliot Ackerman, and just opened for registration, and don't miss this, mark your calendars. I'm so excited. We are having a program with the president of the World Economic Forum. So you can register for these right now on our website at wachouston.org. You can get all the information and see all of our upcoming programs that are built specifically with you in mind for our members, our students, and our guests. Now it is my honor to present Consul Jose Ivo, who will introduce the ambassador. Jose Ivo is the Honorary Consul of Portugal in Houston, and we're so pleased to have him join us this evening. He has a distinguished international career in the mining, oil, gas, chemical, and engineering industry, lastly serving at Bechtel, where his various roles were General Manager of Bechtel Chile, Regional Senior Representative for Chile, Peru, and Bolivia, Regional Director for the Division of Mining and Metals in Latin America, President of the Latin American region for the Bechtel Group, and is America's General Manager for Mining and Metals in Santiago, Chile, just to name a few. And after a full career at Bechtel, he retired in October. He retired as Senior Vice President in October of 2018 in the Oil, Gas, and Chemicals Division right here in Houston. He graduated as a civil engineer from the University of Natal and also completed his education in business management in South Africa. He is one of the founders and members of the Portuguese Diaspora Council, and since 2017, he represents Portugal as the Honorary Consul of Portugal here in Houston. Please join me in welcoming Consul Jose Ivo. Consul, join us.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne, and good evening. To me, Ambassador Domingos Fezas Vital is not only Portugal's ambassador to the United States, but he is also a very good friend. And therefore, it's not only an honor, but it's also a great pleasure to introduce him to the World Affairs Council of Houston. Ambassador Fezas Vital was born in Angola when it was still a Portuguese colony. He graduated in social and legal sciences from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and then proceeded to obtain a law degree from the University of Coimbra. He also has a postgraduate degree in international trade from Brussels and joined the Portuguese Foreign Service in 1984. He is undoubtedly one of Portugal's top diplomats, and in his career he has occupied highly sensitive posts, which goes to show the enormous degree of trust and confidence that Portuguese governments throughout the last few decades have in him and his judgment. Here are a few highlights. Advisor to the Portuguese Minister of Foreign Affairs in the early 90s. Advisor to the last Portuguese governor of Macau, where he was responsible for coordinating border issues prior to the handover of that territory to China in 1999. Consul General of Portugal in São Paulo, Brazil, which, because of its size and the hundreds of thousands of Portuguese nationals that it serves, is one of the most important and challenging consular posts in the Portuguese Foreign Service. He was appointed Deputy Permanent Representative of Portugal to the European Union from 2002 to 2006. And in 2006, he was recalled back to Lisbon to become the President of Portugal's Senior Diplomatic Advisor, a position that he held for 6 years. In 2012, he was appointed Portugal's Permanent Representative to the European Union until 2015, when he became the Ambassador of Portugal to the United States of America. In 2019, Ambassador Fezas Vital was selected by the prestigious Portuguese Industry Confederation as the Diplomat of the Year for his achievements in promoting economic relations between the United States and Portugal. Finally, on a more personal note, Ambassador Fezas Vital is married, has 2 sons, and as of last year, he is also a very proud grandfather. With that, please join me in welcoming Ambassador Domingos Fezas Vital and Sandhya.
Thank you so much, Honorary Consul. Ambassador, welcome. It's my honor to host you and celebrate Portugal's presidency of the Council of European Union. Welcome.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Sandhya, and thank you very much, you, Jose, my dear friend. I have to tell you that, well, listening to you, I have to admit that I'm much older than I would like to believe, you know. But thank you very much for your generous introduction. And I would like to thank the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston for this invitation. I'm very honored, and to thank you all who decided to take some of your time to spend this evening with us. I have to tell you that one of the most relevant trends lately in international relations is exactly the role that is being played by the civil society and by structures of the civil society as the World Affairs Council. Your program of activities is a reference, and one cannot be but very impressed by what you've been doing in promoting international understanding and your focus on students' education. So, congratulations.
Wonderful, Ambassador. Thank you so much for your kind words. And again, we appreciate your time and your busy schedule. Wanted to highlight our council actually has had a pleasure of meeting and working with your deputy, Alexandra, during a somewhat recent tour of Texas of the European DCMs, Deputy Chiefs of Missions from Washington, D.C. We greatly enjoyed organizing the tour and providing various leadership, business, and cultural opportunities for the members of the tour. So great memories and long-lasting connections for sure.
Absolutely, and I have to tell you that after coming from Texas, she keeps telling us, don't mess with me.
That's right, that's our slogan, don't mess with Texas. Audience, just a reminder to please submit your questions through the Q&A tab. I will be on the lookout for those as they generate, and make sure that we incorporate in the discussion, again, through the Q&A tab. Thank you. In preparation for today's webinar, I had to refresh my knowledge about Portugal and ways to showcase its history. A few facts that I think would be really useful to understand the long-standing history and culture and traditions of Portugal. Just 3 short ones. Portugal is the oldest nation state of the Iberian Peninsula, and it was founded in 1143. But the earliest mention of the county of Portugal actually goes back to 868. That is without 1,000, 868. The next fact, interesting too. The population of the country is a bit over 10 million. But as the poet Fernando Pessoa once wrote, my country is my language. As for more than 200 million, again, 10 million population to 200 million people spread throughout Europe, Africa, South America, Asia, this country is called the Portuguese language. Portuguese is currently the 5th most spoken language in the world. And a little fun fact, world affairs, Portugal and England have the oldest diplomatic alliance in the world. The Anglo-Portuguese alliance was signed in 1373. Again, 1373. Mm-hmm. This really is important to understand, again, as we look at Portugal's current leadership, European Union and UN. I know our conversation is not about UN, but what are the chances that Antonio Guterres currently serves as the 9th Secretary General of the United Nations? What a year for Portugal, let me tell you. Now, I would like to indeed turn to our dialogue on Portugal's presidency of the Council of the European Union. Portugal assumed the presidency on January 1st. Belgium, for those who might not know, was the first nation to hold EU presidency. That is all the way back to 1958. Portugal has held this role 3 times before, our last one being in 2007. Mm-hmm. Ambassador, to help our viewers better understand how the EU works and how its laws are created, it would be helpful just to briefly explain what are the, say, 3 main lawmaking bodies of the EU. Many Europeans, I assume many Americans, are not really sure what actual roles of each bodies are. So if you would, what are the 3 main European institutions, and briefly, what are their responsibilities?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. Thanks very much for that. Well, running the risk of being a little bit too simplistic, I would say that the European Commission acts as the executive, and it submits legislation, draft legislation, to 2 bodies. The European Parliament, that is made up of elected European parliamentarians, elected at national level, so is a democratically elected European Parliament, and the European Council as such. So we have 2 bodies discussing the same piece of draft legislation. And the European Council is made up of representatives of elected, democratic elected governments in Europe. When they reach a decision within their respective frameworks, they get together. Under what we call, in European jargon, the co-decision procedure. And so they get together and they reach a compromise, an agreement on the final version of that piece of legislation that will then apply to the European Union as a whole. So in quite a stretched comparison to what happens in the United States, I would say that the European Commission corresponds to the administration, mm-hmm. the European Parliament to the House of Representatives, and the European Council to the Senate. That's more or less, but don't tell anybody that I told you so. Okay.
This is indeed really helpful because some of us are more familiar and some just perhaps haven't really had a chance to learn so much. Again, thank you. This is really most helpful. 3 successive presidencies are known as the presidency trios. Yes. The current trio, 2020 to 2021, is made up of Germany, mm-hmm. Portugal, and then Slovenia will take the leadership from you on your last day is June 30th, and as of July 1st, that will be Slovenia. Yes. The order of EU presidency actually is already formatted all the way up to 2030. It is a large task, indeed, as you mentioned, to manage 27 member states. The presidency's function is to chair the meetings of the council, determine its agendas, set a work program, and facilitate dialogue both at the council meetings and with EU institutions. What does the presidency mean for Portugal? What are the priorities and expectations of this presidency?
Well, Sandhya, as you say, well, this is not our first presidency. We held the presidency of the Council of the European Union for 3 times already. By the way, the treaty that governs the European Union is called Lisbon Treaty, mm-hmm. because it was approved under the Portuguese presidency. the economic and development strategy for the European Union till 2020 was called the Lisbon Strategy, because it was approved under a Portuguese presidency. And even the single currency, the euro, was set up under a Portuguese presidency. So it should have been called Europort or something like that, you know. But that was under, so the bar is quite high and the expectations are quite high and quite justifiably so. But as you were saying, this is a very complex exercise, both at logistic and political level. Logistically speaking, as you were saying, holding the presidency means setting the agenda and chairing more than 1,500 meetings of more than 200 committees at all possible political levels. And why is it so demanding in politically speaking as well? That's because the presidency is expected by everybody to act as a honest broker in reaching a consensus among 27 member states with sometimes very disparate views, as you might imagine.
Sure.
And having reached a consensus among all these 27 member states, we are expected to negotiate and get to an agreement with the European Union, with the European Parliament, as I told you in the beginning. So, under that co-decision procedure that I explained in the beginning. So, politically speaking, is quite a complex exercise. But talking about our priorities and trying to be as quick as possible, I would say that the priorities of all presidencies are a response to the ongoing challenges of the moment, I would say. And so in our case, we have quite emergencies, you know, that we have to tackle. And I would say that there are two: the pandemic, so more urgent challenges, the pandemic and the economic recovery. As far as the pandemic is concerned, our objective is to make sure that by summertime, 70% of the adult population of Europe is vaccinated. And as far as the economic recovery is concerned, our objective is to make sure that the financial package that was approved by the European Union, that amounts to 1.8 trillion euros, reaches each and every member state by summertime. And then you have what I would call the short, medium, and long-term objectives. The green transition, and that means approving a new climate law that will enable the European Union to be the first carbon neutral continent in the world by 2050. Then the digital transition, with the approval of a digital package that encompasses two main legislative acts, one on content and the other one on the economic side of the digital agenda. So making sure that we have a level playing field, you know.
Sure.
The other priority is the social impact of these two transitions, the green and digital transition, and the objective being to make sure that nobody is left behind to the extent possible. We are talking about a new pattern of development, economic development with the green and the digital transition. And the very last but not least, priority is what we call global Europe, is the external dimension of our program. And so the objective is to assert the European Union as an international actor, the EU's role as an international actor. And for that, we think that cooperation with the US is absolutely crucial. This shouldn't come as a surprise coming from Portugal. We are a very proud European nation, but we are also an Atlantic nation. And we've always been among the most vocal European Union member states in arguing in favor of a strong Atlantic link, a strong Atlantic bond. We Portuguese, we see the United States as our neighbor across the pond. And we are very proud of having been the third country in the world to recognize independence of the United States, the first neutral country to recognize independence. And by the way, the independence was toasted by the founding fathers with Portuguese wine, with Madeira wine, and being very modest people, we like to believe that this is one of the reasons why the United States became a success story. You know, it started on a very good note.
Absolutely. And we already have some questions coming in. It's very live stream. So thank you again for all the participants. One of them actually, Alex asks, and you were just mentioning, could you explain how the partnership with the USA takes in this occasion?
Mm-hmm.
How does that partnership take place with the US?
Yes, I think that this is a very important point, because as I said, for us, when addressing all our priorities, all of them, we think that cooperation with the United States is of essence, is crucial. Mm-hmm. When one talks about digital transition, green transition, the fight against climate change, all points that I've mentioned, it is very, very important that we work together with the United States. And why? Because, well, if we do not work together in the present geostrategic context, it will be just impossible for us to make sure that we are heard, you know, and that we are there to set the standards according to our own values. This is very important. We share the same values. This is a basic premise for the underpinning the relations between both sides of the Atlantic. And so, but that depends very much on the answering the question from our audience. That depends very much on the issue that is at stake. If you're talking about security and defense, NATO is the backbone of the transatlantic security and defense. And so this is where we coordinate and decide when defense and security issues are at stake. And there is an ongoing reflection in NATO on the new challenges that we face on both sides of the Atlantic and the tools that we need to tackle this and to address these challenges. But if you talk about the EU and the US, well, I think that there is a momentum there that looks quite promising and that we have to seize. There is a commitment on both sides of the Atlantic now to a stronger and closer relationship. And so from the EU side, we've already submitted to the new administration a document that is called a new global agenda for cooperation with the United States that covers all possible fields. The pandemic, economic recovery, technology, trade, you name it, including relations with third countries. Because this is very important, that we act together in our relation with third countries. Maybe we will not be in agreement all the time, you know? That's normal between friends. It's always like that. But at least we need to make sure that we talk to each other, that we coordinate our positions, you know? So, but having said that, one of the lessons that I've learned from my 5 years here in the United States, and that I keep repeating to my people back home, is the importance of states in the United States. Yes. The word states. And the importance of a bilateral relation between our countries and the states. And this is a reflection of the decentralized form of government in the United States that proved so successful. And so we need to talk to states as well, and not only to the federal authorities. I hope that this answers the question.
Absolutely. Helen has a follow-up question, a little bit more detailed, but perhaps it already was answered in as you mentioned, you submitted as a packet for the new administration, just asking for the current status on negotiations between EU and US on the new trade agreement. I'm not sure if you can comment more, or perhaps that is already part of submitted paperwork as well.
No. As you know, well, in the past, we negotiated with the United States. It was still Obama administration, a trade and investment agreement that was called the TTIP.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was decided by the past administration that it was no longer relevant, and so what we are discussing now is trade in general. You know, I do not exclude that at the end of the day, the end result will be a trade and investment agreement, maybe. But the priority now is to sort out, is to solve the existing irritants, I would say, I would call them trade irritants that are there, you know. So there are some trade tariffs, you know, for different reasons that have been adopted on both sides of the Atlantic. There was already quite a promising development. There was a decision both by the European Union and the United States to suspend, you know, these tariffs for 4 months to give both sides time to make sure that we resolve the situation, that we sort it out, you know, and that we can start discussing other issues, you know. So I would say that a trade agreement as such is not on the table now, but I do not exclude that we will have it in the near future as a point for discussion and negotiation, of course.
Absolutely. Like I said, we have a very active stream of questions coming in. So all of yours, if I do not get to your question and simply we didn't get to it, please don't feel that we are ignoring any message. Again, I want to put forward as much as possible for the ambassador. Sally's has a submitted question or statement, says, these 6 months are a wonderful opportunity. It's a wonderful opportunity for the presidency country to showcase itself. Cultural exhibitions, seminars, and others that we were so used to and so miss the in-person opportunities. How is Portugal being celebrated in this kind of restrictive time?
Well, as you might imagine, well, our program is very much affected by the constraints imposed by the pandemic. So I would say that this is mostly a online presidency in a way. But we'd like to showcase Portugal as the very modern and very vibrant society it is, at the forefront in very different areas, just the technological and innovation areas, you know. But at the same time, as a very committed European country, you know, committed to the European integration process. So in showcasing Portugal, we'll be showcasing European Union as such as well. We are doing that through a very ambitious program of monthly webinars on topics that are relevant for the European Union, for the United States, for our relationship, you know, and they are always followed by concerts, so showcasing Portuguese culture and Portuguese culture and Portuguese performers and Portuguese American performers as well. The topics that we've been addressing, the first webinar was on the contribution of the European diasporas for relations between the European Union and the United States. The second one was on a common response, transatlantic response to climate change. And the third one, which will be held on the 26th this month, will be on global challenges, a transatlantic response in the present geostrategic context. And you are all invited to join us.
And if we wanted to participate, is it something we access through website?
Yes.
Embassy
yes,
website?
Absolutely. I'll make sure that you get all the indications but you can join through Zoom and Facebook.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions, Brexit related, understandably so. One of them is that has this created Brexit? That means, has it created more concern about other nations possibly wanting to leave, or has it perhaps made more nations understand the value of being part of EU?
I would say that the answer is clearly the second one. If you go both by the polls, by what the polls tell us, you know, but also by the outcome of the last elections for the European Parliament in 2019, with quite a sizable increase in the level of participation, going against what was the trend, by the way, and with parties against the European Union performing quite poorly, you know, so losing lots of ground. Mm-hmm. So this shows that in general, the European Union citizen feels after Brexit that belonging to the European Union is a big advantage, you know. So I would say that the answer is clearly the second part of your question.
David has a, again, follow-up or related, again, has the exit of the UK had any impact on the dynamics of the EU process? Anything additional to perhaps what you just mentioned?
Yeah. Yes, of course. But I would say that there is a point that I would like to make. You mentioned in the beginning this long-lasting relationship between Portugal and the UK.
Yes.
You know, that we have the oldest alliance, still existing alliance in the world. It is there, it will continue being there. Of course, Portugal would very much prefer the UK to stay with us in the European Union. So, but this is not what the decision of the UK's people. Well, let's
citizens, yeah.
UK citizens, and it was a democratic decision, so we have to accept it.
Absolutely.
And so, what we have to make sure is that the relation between the European Union and the UK is the best possible one, and that everything goes as smoothly as possible in the relation between the European Union and the UK. And that implies continue talking with the UK and making sure that when we decide among us at the European Union level, that we bear in mind the general context, you know, and the general context includes the UK as a very strong partner of the European Union. And so, not as presidency, but as a member state of the European Union, Portugal will be always arguing in favor of a very strong and close relationship with the UK. That's for sure.
Thank you. Lauren has a question. How will the EU continue to balance the complexities of the United Nations that may have very different levels of economic development, let's say Germany versus Greece or Italy, or traditions of democracy such as, say, Holland versus Hungary?
Good question. Well, first on the economic side of it, we have a cohesion policy within the framework of our budget, the European Union's budget, whose objective is exactly, to address the first part of your question. And so to enable, so to speak, weaker, economically speaking, member states to catch up. But I'm talking about the budget in general. But sometimes we face special circumstances, as we did with the economic and financial crisis in 2008, and now with the economic impact of the ongoing pandemic crisis. And for that, we've been approving at European Union's level special aid and support, financial support packages to address these sort of problems. That was the case with the, as I said, with the economic crisis arising from the the pandemic is the one of the effects of the pandemic. And for that, we've approved a financial package that amounts to 1.8 trillion euros. And one of our priorities, as I said, is to make sure that this money reaches every and single member state. But we have at European level a sort of Fed, which is the European Central Bank, that has a very close oversight of economic trends and behaviors, you know. And the objective of the ECB is, of course, to make sure that weaker member states, economically speaking, are not affected disproportionately by these trends and behaviors as the Fed. So I would say that the role is very similar to the Fed. As far as the political side of it, the Lisbon Treaty has 2 articles to deal with that sort of situation, which are Article 2 and Article 7. They've been invoked already to address some particular situations, and quite successfully, I would say. So we are very happy with the instruments, the tools that we have to address these sort of situations.
Wonderful, thank you. And just that we were starting this specific question, Tyler had submitted. So Tyler, just thank you and noticed your question, and it was literally Ambassador was answering as you were typing. So great minds think alike. Moving on to the next one. Some Europeans feel that the workings of the EU and its politicians are quite removed and disconnected from the citizens of Europe. How does the EU make itself to be a political body that is more in tune with or aware of the views of its citizens?
Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you very much. And I would say that this is a concern that has been there since the inception of the European Union, you know. And I would say that it's an ongoing discussion. So we've been doing lots of things to address the point. But I would like to emphasize the fact, or to single out the fact, that just recently, 2 weeks ago, under the Portuguese presidency, we've just launched a conference on the future of Europe that will be there for the next years, you know, exactly to address this sort of problem. And this is a conference that will rely very much on contributions coming from citizens themselves. You know, they will be very much involved in the process. And what we hope is that by the end of the day, we will have a European Union that, as you were saying, becomes closer to the European Union citizens and better prepared to answer their expectations. So that's our hope.
Absolutely.
We will see. But I think that this is a question that applies to the European Union, but also to all democratic societies, including the United States. So here again, the reflection process that is going on in Europe is very similar to the discussion that we see going on in the United States presently.
And you concluded exactly with the United States, and we have actually a question from David, which is, since you have been in Washington since 2015, you have observed now 3 USA administrations. How has the changes impacted the EU and the Portugal, or have they?
Well, I would say that, of course, the policies pursued by the US administrations have a very important effect on the transatlantic link. But first of all, as a diplomat and a representative of my country here, the US is a democracy. And so I have to work with the administration in Washington and in the different states, always bearing in mind that I'm dealing with administration that has been chosen by the Americans themselves, you know, by the American people. And so this is I would say, the basis for anything I do or any diplomat does in the United States. Respect for the decisions taken by the American people. Having said that, it's not a secret that the new administration, the Biden administration, is strongly committed to what they call restoring the transatlantic link. And so we can't but be very happy with that. And so we hope that it will be possible in the years to come to make sure that we work together with the United States very closely in all possible fields. So I would say that this is my answer.
Absolutely. Danny is asking us, how will Portugal measure the success of EU presidency's term that will end the last day of June?
Yeah, well, I would say that I've identified what our priorities are. So if by the end of June, we will be able to tell you, Sanja, that we've accomplished everything, well, that would be quite a success. So I would say that the measure of our success is very much related to the level of success in fulfilling our priorities. So in responding to our priorities. But at the end of the day, what we hope is that by the end of June, we will have a European Union that is stronger and more resilient. And so better prepared to face the challenges of the present and of the future. As far as relations with the United States are concerned, we hope that they will be closer, of course, and that we'll be ready to do what I've just said, well, work for a better world together in stronger terms.
Wonderful. And I think talking about the future, and we hope and miss the, again, people-to-people opportunities. So there are some questions related to the to travel. It is something that in everybody's mind, and I think some of us are very restless to go and explore. And Portugal certainly is one of the countries that I haven't been and would love to visit and bring a group of World Affairs members to explore. Bernard is asking, when is Europe likely to open its borders to the US travelers? We will all be vaccinated all by this summer. I need to know when I can book my ticket and fly across the Atlantic. What are you hearing that we don't know?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. That's the question. That's the answer. But Sanja, I would say that by summertime, as I said, by summertime, we hope that 70% of the adult population of Europe will be vaccinated. If one goes with the experts, that means that herd immunity will be there in Europe. If you put this together with the objective that is being pursued by the current administration in the United States, which is, as you said, to have everybody vaccinated by May, June, I would say that by summertime, conditions will be, would have been met, you know, for us to be optimistic about the resuming of traveling. But let's see, nobody knows. And one has to be cautious.
Absolutely.
Know that we have some variants there. Let's hope that the situation remains as it is, you know, because this is the situation we are addressing and we are tackling. Nobody knows if the situation changes, what the future might bring, you know. But if the situation remains as it is, the progress that we're making, but you know, is what it is. I would say that by summertime, we can be quite optimistic that traveling will be resumed. So I'll be able to travel to Texas.
Absolutely.
And to see my grandchild in Portugal in summer.
Wonderful. Very much still, again, the same themes keep coming through and, you know, different formatted questions. Question about, Paul is asking about the future of the Schengen agreement and and there's another question also, what is the future of the Schengen agreement given the COVID-19?
Mm-hmm. Well, the Schengen agreement has some clauses to address emergency situations. That's where we are now. And so I think that the moment the situation changes, of course, we will be back to what the normal Schengen agreement is. And so we'll be applying to the Schengen area as in the past. But of course, if we are under urgent and a different situation, which is one we are going through now, the clauses applying are those applying to this sort of situation. So let's hope that by summertime, with the situation improving, we'll be back to the Schengen agreement as it is normally is.
Absolutely.
No borders among our member states.
Thank you. Again, similar theme, how will, and if there was something different to add, how will the EU address the 4 freedoms, goods, capital, service, labor after COVID-19?
Well, first of all, the four freedoms are still there. So it's, of course, with some adjustments because of the pandemic. So after the pandemic, when the pandemic is no longer there, of course, we'll be back to the usual procedures or lack of among us. But I would say that as far as the freedom of movement of goods, for instance, it's still there. So we have what we call green corridors, and we are using them. So they are not in danger as such, you know.
Thank you. David is asking, what are the most important issues or issue today to the Portuguese people?
The pandemic.
Absolutely.
Economic recovery. But I would say that one goes with the other.
Yeah.
If you don't beat the pandemic, you cannot talk about economic recovery in a credible way. You know, nobody will. You cannot, talk about economic growth with a pandemic going on. So it's just one thing goes with the other.
Completely. And I think it's a global challenge. Absolutely. Both of these are topics that are every nation of the world, I think, has the same issues. Ambassador, you've had, as we've heard from Honorary Consul's introduction and bio, that you've had a very long and impressive career. This is also part of our student initiatives. We do a lot of work with Houston area students, different high schools, and we participate with students, as Marianne mentioned in her remarks. We have student Global Leaders Academy and ways for them to learn more, to participate with the summer. And so the question is, what advice would you give to any student who might want to consider a career in diplomacy?
Well, I would say that, first of all, bear in mind the immense honor that is to serve your country, but also the immense responsibility, I would say. Then be always open-minded. A good diplomat is a diplomat that is able to read people and the situation. And for that, you need to be open-minded, always ready to listen to the others. And so be always curious. I would say, forget about bias, preconceived ideas, you know? My father used to tell me, Domingos, you should always be curious. The moment you stop being curious, you'll be dead. And so I think that this is very important for a diplomat as well. Be curious about the other country, about other people, you know, other countries and other people. And last but not least, you should never forget something that President Franklin Roosevelt once said, which is, you don't learn much while you're talking. Or as our parents would have told us, you know, there is a reason for God having given us 2 ears and 1 mouth, you know.
Absolutely.
So
I use that sometimes in my daily life a lot.
I'm not sure that this applies to me now. But this is something that I try not to forget. I'm afraid that I was not very successful now.
No, thank you. Kind of a geopolitically related question from Alan. Can you discuss the growing trade relations between EU and China?
They are growing in a way, not in 2019, by the way. Trade and investment decreased in 2019. And one should always bear in mind that even if it's growing, it has no comparison whatsoever to the trade and investment relation we have with the United States. You know, no comparison whatsoever. But of course, it's been growing. It's been growing. China is for the time being, the second economy in the world. So it's just normal that we have, as the United States, by the way, a very significant and sizable trade and investment relationship with China.
Thank you. I think we're looking at the clock, and I want to make sure that we're respectful of your time and your busy day today and your schedule for tomorrow as well. So make sure that we are again respectful of that. I wanted to ask you if perhaps there are some closing remarks or anything that we have not highlighted that you would like us to bring up before we close.
I would say that you covered most of everything that was there to be covered, frankly speaking. And but I would like to thank you very, very much for this opportunity, not only to speak, but to learn from you, from your questions. I think that they were very, very good questions, very good questions. And so I would like to thank you for that as well. Not only for the opportunity to speak, but also for the opportunity to learn. Thank you very, very much. And to tell you that I miss Texas a lot.